When I was a boy, I grew up in the Catholic Church. I would call myself an apathetic Catholic. Throughout my whole time in the church, which is probably, I think I went there for about 10, 11 years, I had no idea what was going on. I didn't know really what Jesus was. I just knew it was a story about some guy in a desert. I didn't know what God was. I didn't know what these rituals meant. I didn't know anything about anything. And this whole period of my life was just pure apathy, pure confusion, and pure going with the flow with what my parents. And my parents, this is a key part too, my parents never reached out and tried to teach me and explain to me what this stuff was. It was just kind of a thing that you do, which is kind of that tradition boomer mindset. It's just the thing that you do and you go to it, right? So I wasn't getting a lot from it at all. And because of that, around 2010, 2011, my mom and I stopped going to the Catholic Church, and soon followed was my dad, who kind of clung to it due to his Catholic school upbringing, but even he eventually got disillusioned and realized that this church isn't practical, this church wasn't fostering community, this church wasn't engaging in the broader world and trying to spread Christian values and the gospel. It was basically a gathering place for really old people to come and feel secure on the weekends and feel like they're continuing what they grew up with. But there was no growth, there was no vitality, there was no long-term Christian love ethic being at play. So from there, middle school began, high school began, and this is what I would call the second phase of my life. This is the apathetic atheist phase of my life. And I say atheism because it was an apathetic atheism of negation, in the sense that I wasn't actively an atheist. I wasn't actively writing forum posts about why God isn't real and wearing a fedora and tipping it to all the ladies and shit like that. It was just, I didn't think about God. I didn't understand what that was. I didn't see the value in life. I didn't see how it fit into life as a thing. I thought it was just kind of a place that old people go and pray and whatever. So it was atheism by default, which is what I think a lot of American youth are in today. They're atheists by default because they don't understand the truth about God because they've never been taught it properly. So throughout this phase, it was 4 to 10 hours a day of video games. It was lots of weed. It was lots of time on the internet watching esports like Counter-Strike. And it was being a fuck around in real life, kind of coping with getting B's and just not caring about school, getting indoctrinated sort of in the public school system. I never was fully a part of the system. I always grew up and I've always had let's call it a rightist or a libertarian edge to myself. But school definitely indoctrinates you into one way. It makes you view authority in one way. It makes you get into the routine of the submission and the bells and whatnot. It's the form factory workers that are obedient. And so for those whole years, for middle school through high school, I was bored. The boredom and apathy and neutrality was how I viewed the world. There was no fire, there was no deep love, there was no deep passion. The only times that came out for me, which is what drew me to it, and eventually kind of course corrected my life, was filmmaking and creating stuff. And so, around this time, I was reading books by people like Sam Harris. Yeah, not. I wish I didn't, but reading books by pseudo-intellectuals like Sam Harris, and kind of trying to advance out into these some of these older books. And the big turning point that changed me forever was Dr. Jordan Peterson. And whatever you think about him now, I certainly have changed my opinion on what he is. That moment in 2016-17 era of him coming on the world stage and putting out these lectures on psychology and moral philosophy and eventually on the Bible, these really changed my life and how I view the world. And Dr. Peterson isn't some revolutionary thinker. Like, people like to say that. I don't think he's a revolutionary thinker at all. I think he's a fantastic repackager of old truths and other people's works and whatnot. He distills it down in a very succinct way. You know, he's got a very kind, sort of semi-grandfatherly vibe to him, where you just trust him. You think he's like an old boomer that just likes the books, right? And is trying his absolute hardest to teach you. And you know, I enjoyed his psychology lectures. I enjoyed like kind of the clean your room type stuff that was kind of working out. And also, parallel to this, I started reading Guerrilla Mindset by Mike Cernovich, which to this day, I haven't read in a long time. It probably still stands the test. Just a great overall self-improvement book on just like becoming a good man that understands development of the self and understands how to make something of himself in the world. I still think it's really the only book out of all the red pill crap that came out through all the years. That's the only book that is worth reading to this day. It's evergreen, and it's very short. It's succinctly written, and a lot of the principles in there you can carry on throughout the rest of your life. But back to Peterson, if you had to distill it down to one moment that changed totally everything, right? Because these ideas were slowly creeping in, and as you know, with any change, it happens slowly and over time. But one moment was when he released his first biblical lecture, and it was called An Introduction to the Idea of God. And to me, this was a massive turning point, because I always thought God, I genuinely, looking back, I don't even know what God was. I don't even know what my conception of what I thought God was, because it was so murky. It was just nothing. It was just a thing that Catholics pray to, that I did, and I never self-identified as a Catholic. I'm baptized a Catholic, but I never truly self-identified. Church wasn't cool, right? Church wasn't what got you popular. It's not where the community and the friends were, right? So I went away from that. But Jordan Peterson says the whole summation of the point in an introduction to the idea of God, which is his first lecture, was that God is the archetypal ideal that we all strive for and we all sacrifice for. And this is like the most basic level. This is like what you teach 3-year-olds, right, in the 1700s, right? This is like what every medieval peasant knew. But for me, this is like, whoa, wait, it's an ideal. Wait, it's something you strive towards. It's something you can like you can think about and you can work to embody. It was a clear path. That's why you worship it, because it's literally above you in terms of that metaphor, right? Like below is hell, and that's where all this stuff coming from. So all these old religious things that made no sense at all, and I just thought I was like, oh, that's dumb literalist, you know, storybooks for stupid people. I just read Sam Harris and I'm an intellectual. No, none of that shit. All this stuff started making sense. Heaven, striving for the above. Hell, being in a state of your life that you can't get out of. It's murky and it's awful. All these things started coming together. All of them. And obviously, I'm nowhere near like a Christian scholar or an intellectual, all that stuff. But what I'm saying is, these things started to piece together, and they started to form in my mind, and a coherent worldview the seeds started to sprout down. And so I started reading Carl Jung. For the first time in my life, I started trying to read like old literature again, right? Because I always grew up loved reading books, but towards middle school and high school, video games were more fun because shooty pooty, right? Yeah, you know, the dopamine, the loot boxes open up, right? But now, going back into these old books, figuring out who Dostoevsky was, looking at Shakespeare, right? All these new things open up because I have this brand new worldview of seeing the world, of seeing a meta-truth upon everything. Not everything is literal, not everything is stupid stories, not everything is rationalist atheism. There's metaphors, there's higher truths, there's levels to these metaphors that go way up high in the sky and also way back down in our past. It's insane, right? This opening of the switch, this opening of the door to seeing a whole new version of reality was just, man, I appreciate Dr. Peterson. So if you're watching this, thank you. And from there, you know, I guess the most important part was I got to start reading the Bible, right? And this is very key. And it's crazy how many Christians like don't read the Bible. They go to church, but they don't actually open up the book and read and contemplate and meditate and try to think about the historical context behind all these people and kind of what the stories are meaning and whatnot. And so I started reading the Bible, and I try to read the Bible every day, and I'm bad at it, but I try to read the Bible every single day. And it's immense what the Bible has to teach to people who are willing to listen. it's one of those books where you read it, or you read sections, or you read the Gospels, for example. I'm going over the Gospels many times to see and extract as much as I can from it. But it's one of those things where you come back a year later and you've lived in a certain way and you've had certain experiences and you've overcome challenge, you're more developed now, and you come back to the Bible and you're like, wow, wait, this part makes sense now. I can see this. And that's been the most incredible thing. It's a book that transforms and reveals more to you as you go on, right? This is why I think Revelation is not some moment in time that's going to happen in the future. I think Revelation is eternal. At least one level of revelation. It's an eternal happening of endless knowing of the truth and endless, discovery of what reality actually is. And from this point onward, the rationalist atheist stuff was totally out. Like, I don't care about that stuff anymore. I don't care about techniques and rationalism and using logic. I don't care. I think these things are tools. I think logic is a tool that you use to reach certain truths, right? It's like the Legos of the mind, right? You have all the pieces, right? And you're forming them together to create something or to prove something, right? But logic isn't the spark. Logic isn't the divine intervention that you need to form revolutionary and new ideas. And, that's why I think things like rationalism are now, as you can see with people like Sam Harris we just talked about, it's a dead hole. You go there and you get controlled by forces far beyond your belief. You get controlled because you're so blind to the fact that you're striving for this rationalism, which is just basically, it's impossible to be rationalist as a human. And as you can see with Harris and other of the atheist types, they get totally controlled by emotions, and they have no clear, objective way of understanding the world. It's fascinating to see. And so from there, I've just been slowly putting these truths together and trying to piece together the world. And now that I have a moral framework, I feel so oriented in the world. Even when the times are hard, right? Even when the times are hard, I am so much clearer on what the path is than I was when in 15, 16. And I'm only 23 now, so this is still new to me. I'm still piecing this stuff together, right? And that's why I said there's only 3 phases, because I don't got any more phases left. But the clarity that you get from this orientation is unbelievable. And in this modern world where, like I just said, this stuff is revolutionary to us, right? To us retards in this modern era. It's not like you're above people and that it's like, but you get the eyes to see, and you get to realize all these, you're able to see through scams and psyops, and you're able to see just people lying. Like, you used to, before this stuff, you didn't have that sense. Now you can just see lies. You can just rely. You have your intuition. You have that Holy Spirit to say, that is just a psyop. That's a lie. That's a distraction. And you're able to find all these things, and you're able to relate it back to something way higher than your desires and your passions and all this crap. And so I'm stable. I feel way more stable than I was. I feel like I have my rock, which is this higher morality which isn't moving. And I have my opinions that constantly change and my views on specific things, but the principles of loving everybody, of striving to serve everybody as possible, of striving to just be a genuinely good person, of having boundaries while also knowing, the spirit of the law must rise above the letter of the law, and that rationalism and legalism and all this stuff is a dead end to hell. And you have the spirit inside of you to rise up, the human spirit, to make something greater of yourself and to make something greater of the world. And to me, I think that is the most beautiful thing in all of humanity. And as I've talked about in previous videos, right? This moral framework, it trains you to view reality in a way which is just truthful. You view everything as challenges. You view everything as a step to the next level of ascension and the next level of truth and the next level of knowing and connection with the Most High. And when you put life into this perspective, it's no longer this chaos of moving forces and insanity and insane power politics and psychos. It's now very ordered. You know why people are like this, because they're distanced from the truth. Right? Once you have the objective truth and you see reality and you see how reality builds around it, you can see how people get so divorced from the truth. This is why you say sinners. Sinning is missing the mark, right? It's an archery metaphor. So when you see all this sin around you, and you see how much of a mark it's missed from the truth, and the you know, the clarity that reality will give you if you only just sit there and listen, and you sit there and remove your ego from it, and you decide to read some of these old texts and interface it with the world as it is. So religion is crazy, spirituality is insane. I love every minute of it, and my journey is far, far from over, and you know, with eternal life and all that stuff, it'll never be over. So I'm just happy I was able to share that story with you. You know, and as you can see on this channel, the story is going to keep growing, it's going to keep changing, new things are going to happen left and right, boom, 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 all that stuff. So that was just one of, you know, one of the layers on my life story so far, and hope you enjoyed it. Like, comment, subscribe. If you got something from this, I'd love to hear your story about your conversion to a faith or a spirituality. I'd love to hear how you, as a guy or whatever, or even a girl, if you guys are watching this, right? I don't think my demographics are in that, but if you're a guy who's watching this and you're struggling with this sort of stuff, I'd love to hear from you and figure out, you know, just let you give you a space where you can talk about this stuff. So this has been Tiger. Love you all, brothers. We'll talk soon.